Do you want to make removable loads for your coal hoppers and N-scale? Why don't you sit back and watch this segment, see how we did it on the Sayre secondary. Hello everyone, Joe from Central Jersey Conrail and N-scale. Welcome back. This is our next installment of the Paint Shop series. So this segment, we're going to be working on sand loads for my hopper cars. So currently I'm using the Conrail H43 class hoppers to simulate sand cars going in and out of the Clayton pit. But I wanted some kind of load to put in there, that would simulate sand, and something that was removable, so I could represent empties and full loads. So, I was watching one of Ken Patterson's What Needs This Week segments, and, he's a big proponent of that expandable foam that comes in the can, that plumbers and electricians use to spray it around for insulating gaps and stuff. And, I saw the segment where he was making removable coal loads for his hopper cars, and I was like, that seems like a great idea. Let me give it a shot. It seemed like a great idea because, it's not labor intensive. You don't have to worry about carving pink foam to fit in. You just spray it in and then it pops in and out. So, we're going to give it a shot. This is the first time I'm doing it. Never tried it before, so I think we're going to do it together. So why don't you sit back and watch how we did it. Okay, so we're going to get started making the sand loads for our hopper cars. So my hopper cars, the H43s, they're all Atlas models. What I had done is underneath the coal loads, I had glued in BBs, and I wanted to get all that out of there so that the insert that we're going to make sits nice and flush with the body. So that took some time. Yeah, I recommend not doing that. There's got to be better ways to weigh these cars than doing that. It was just a mess to get out, but took time. A couple days just picking away a little at a time. I advise you not to use heat. I tried to melt the glue to soften it up, and we melted the hopper. But for our purposes here, we're just going to go with it. I know it's a little much damage for a hopper car. It probably would have been taken out of service, but just for the sake of doing this video, I'm just going to go ahead with it and see what we can do. And okay, so we're going to get started. So first thing what we're going to do is I took some plastic bags, just regular old shopping bags, and I cut them up. Cut out all the seams. You want nice flat plastic. You don't want any of the the crinkles or seams that are in it. So cut up a bunch of those pieces. I had some great stuff. I had the fire block foam laying around. It's a little more pricey. I think it's like $2 or $3 more a can. It's the fire resistant one. This is left over from when I did the basement, so we're going to use this. Otherwise, just buy the cheaper one, which is the normal kind of stuff. So what we need to do first is we're going to set up our hopper cars, and then we're going to put the plastic in each one. So just give me a minute. I'll get it all set up and I'll show you. So the first thing what you need to do is take this plastic, and we're going to push it down into each car. Use a little tool or something to get it all in all the little crevices, nooks and crannies, and make sure you poke it down in there, okay? So then you're going to get that set up. Then what we'll do next is shake your can up, make sure you're good to go, and sparingly spray some foam in each one. Ooh. That's why we put the plastic in there. So we'll let that sit, and we'll get ready to do the next one. That's way too much, but we'll just let it sit there and expand. Okay, so as you can see, it's already been like a few minutes. You can see how it's really expanding, and what's happening is it's filling out the crevices in the hopper car. And this little plastic is going to act as our releasing agent. So when this hardens up, we'll be able to pull it out. So I'm going to let this dry real good overnight, and we'll come back tomorrow and start pulling them out. Just a word of advice. My experience with these cans is that nozzle gets all gummed up. I usually just throw it away. I found some of the Home Depots actually sell the nozzles that you can just buy them in like a 2 or 3 pack to replace it, because once it gets full of that foam in there, they're never really usable again once they dry. So what I recommend doing is laying out as many cartridges as you can to maximize your use of your can. And just continue using it. Or, you know, like Ken Patterson uses that real fancy reusable nozzle. You can get one of those, but I've never seen those, and I don't know how much they cost or where he even got those from. So, all right, so we're going to let this set up overnight. We'll come back tomorrow and in the morning and take a look at them. All right. Okay, so we've let our Expandifoam harden overnight. And what we're going to do now is we're going to start taking it out. So I'm just going to grab this first one here, and all you got to do is just pull it right out, and it pops right out. You're going to peel this plastic bag off, throw that away. As you can see, it fits down in there and made a nice impression of the inside of the car. So now what we have to do is we have to trim off all this excess. So use a serrated knife. This actually is for trimming insulation. So I had that. And I'm just going to cut it down. Start shaving it all off. And you can see how it fits down in there. So I'm going to take, and you can see that the impression lines, I just follow those along to cut it down. You can see it fits in there pretty good. And what we're going to do is do a final trim to get it to the top of the hopper. Okay, so it's in there right now. It's cut a little crooked. Now it's right to the top of the sills there on the hopper. If you were doing coal loads, you could kind of make a mound, shave it down. But we're doing sand, so they wouldn't fill the sand right up to the top because sand is very heavy, and you also have to allow for, if the sand gets wet, it retains the water, so it adds more weight to the car. So consequently, they're only going to load the sand maybe halfway at most. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to trim this down again. Now if you look, it sits down in there. So when you look at it, you don't see it until you look inside. So that'll be, that actually will be perfect. It fits in there, and you can see it comes out pretty easy. And that was because the plastic bag gives it a little gap on the outside. So this way it's not too tight. All right, so I'm going to work on the rest of the cars now. Okay, so as you can see, they're all trimmed up and they're all fitted in. A couple of them had some air bubbles in it, so we're going to try and work around that. So they all fit down in there and nice. Cut. You know, they're not perfect. They're not, you know, but I'm not really worried about that. I just want to get the essence of a load that's in there. So this is where we're headed with this, and this is the ultimate goal, is to take a magnetic pickup tool like that and pull the load right out. As you can see, I took a little nut or washer on the bottom. So let's get going on putting the metal on the bottom. Okay, so this is what we're going to do with that. Just grab a little nut out of my hardware bin. I'm going to cut a little flat spot in here. Now you got to be very very careful with this when you're cutting, because you know it's not a whole lot of foam. It's kind of fragile, so you don't want to break it and have to start all over remolding. Alright. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take, it'll fit right in that little pocket there. As you can see, it's kind of level with the foam around it. I'll take a little bit of Gorilla Glue. I'll set it in there and I'll put it aside to dry. So I'm going to try and keep the load right next to the hopper because they are kind of custom molded, so I want to make it easier finding them again. Okay, so there you go. We mounted the nuts up and they're glued. We're gonna let them set and dry for the day, and we'll come back later this evening and we'll get working on the sand. Just a note, what I forgot to mention is I tried to generally put the metal nut in the center bay, so it's just so it's even and it's an easier spot to remember to take your pickup tool and just go for the center of the car. So, all right, okay, we'll see you the next step. Okay, so now that we got everything all mounted up, what I did was I went and made some sand. Well, I didn't make it. This is sand that I collected out from the Clayton Sand pit when I was out doing some research. What I did was I triple sifted it and then baked it and broke up all the chunks, and then re-sifted it again one more time to get nice fine granulars. And the reason you want to bake this is because number one, it dries it out and makes it easier to use, and number two, it kills any microbes that may be in the actual sand. So this way it's all nice and clean. Now we got sand for our loads. So the first thing what we're going to do before we start coating them with sand is I'm going to paint them. So we're going to pull our loads out. And what I'm using is I matched the color best I could to the sand. This is Apple Barrel Khaki. Actually, these paints are really cool. I got them at Walmart. This was only 57 cents. And it's real thick, so it's good for what we need. And I matched it as close to the sand color as I could. So all we're going to do is we're just going to shoot a big glob on there, and I'm just going to paint it just to hide that orange and kind of fill in the porous material of the foam, so it's nice and uniform to collect the sand. We're going to see how this load comes out because this one is got some big air bubbles in it, as you can see. So we're going to try and work around that. What I'm going to do so I don't get paint all over myself is I'm just going to stick it on the magnet like that. Well, too late, I already did. So we'll just work this paint in and fill all these little holes. Okay, and now I'll just put it aside to dry. And I'm going to do that for all of them. Be gentle when you're pulling this off the magnet because the foam is real weak. I'll pull the next one out. And I like this apple barrel because it's real thick, water-based acrylic, and it dries quick. So it's ideal for doing this kind of stuff because it fills in all them holes. And we're actually able to fill in those air bubbles, so now it's nice and uniform. Oh, that one came open. Just fill that in. And we'll put this one aside. Okay. So now we'll let these dry up on the mat, and we'll come back when they're dry and do the next step. Okay, so now that we've given our paint time to dry, it's time to go ahead and let's put some sand on, just to give it some realistic texture. So we're going to take our sand that we got, open the bin up. First thing what we're going to do is use some Elmer's glue. Again, I'm going to use the magnet to my advantage. I'm going to put it on here to hold it. And all we're going to do is we're going to slather it with a good, healthy coat of Elmer's glue. I use my brush. Make sure we get a good coverage. It's good and covered. So now what I'll do is I'll take a spoon. And all we're going to do is we're going to just let it run down and get in the glue, fill up all the areas. There. That's one load. And then I'll just put it aside to let it dry. Another thing I want to do with this glue is try to fill in all these divots so it looks as smooth as possible so I don't got any holes. Okay, so I let the sand loads dry and I fit them into our hopper cars. So now you can pick them up with the magnet and they pop right out. Some of the foam, it left some gaps. It's still a work in progress. We still got to keep experimenting, but as you could see, there's a lot of gaps in there. But at this point, it serves the purpose of simulating a load of sand, just to give you the visual appearance. And this way they're easily removed so that now we can simulate an empty hopper. And what I did was I took the time to use some weathering powders and just weathered the inside. So this way it has a used appearance. It doesn't appear to be new. The only thing I couldn't figure out is how to hide that bar. I may end up coming in here with some paint or something and painting that metal weight that's in the bottom of the hopper. So now with the loads are ready to go up in the layout. So, okay. Okay, everyone, so there you have it. So, here at Central Jersey Conrail and Inskill, I like to show you when I do things right, but, I also like to admit to mistakes, and let me just tell you, I'm not too happy with the way it came out. So, I'm even looking at it now, and this has been about a week after the segment. First of all, with the expanding foam, in-scale hoppers are a lot smaller than HO scale. So the foam had a tendency with me was to make bubbles in it, and so when I was cutting the foam, I got a lot of bubbles in it. So you can see that load. There's a lot of divots and stuff in there. Also, the other thing is it seems like that expanding foam has a shrinkage rate, because if you look, there's all these gaps in there now, and that wasn't like that when I finished. I trimmed them so that they were real close to the edge, so I'm a little, I don't quite understand why it contracted as much as it did. The other thing was, you know, the magnet idea, the magnet and the nut. I put the nut on the bottom side. I don't think that was the best idea. The nut should have been on the top side, because if you look, if I put the load and I try to pick it up with the magnet, well, it worked this time, but it seems like it's only working out of like 2 times out of 10. And I think the nut should have been on the top side of the load and then covered with sand, so it would have been easier for the magnet pickup. So, you know, there's a lot of things that I didn't like the way it came out. So, you know, on the plus side, you know, the sand, it really worked out well. You know, it gives you a good impression that there's sand in there. You can see the texture. You know, it's also a little conversation piece, because, you know, I could say, oh, you know, that's the actual sand from the Glidden pit. So really liked how that came out. The other part is, you know, what you have to realize is, so an H43 class hopper is about 100 tons. Now, 100 tons of coal is a lot different than 100 tons of sand, because sand is more dense. So what the tendency was, if they're using hoppers for sand, they wouldn't fill them up as much, especially an open top hopper, because what happens is when the sand gets wet, it gets heavier, and so they would allow for that. So, you know, the thing is with the expanding foam, the loads, they look a little too high to me, but, you know, I'm kind of being nitpicky. So, you know, the good thing is right now I have about 6 hoppers that I did, and I got some representation that there is a load, and they are, you know, removable. You just got to use the uncoupling tool to kind of pry them up. So, you know, it's a step in the right direction. So what I'm planning on doing now is I'm going to try something different with the sand loads. I'm actually going to go get some pink foam from Home Depot, and I'm just going to sit down and carve it and get it to fit in there, because I don't, you know, I'm not happy with them gaps. And, you know, also some of the loads actually warped, so some of the ends are like sticking up. I guess because the foam was too thin in certain spots, and and with that shrinkage, I guess it just warped out of shape. So I'm not totally too happy with the way it looks. So I'm going to get back to the drawing board, and we're going to learn from our mistake here. And I'm just going to get some pink foam. We're going to carve it by hand, get it to fit down in the hopper, and I'm going to put that nut on the top end, so it'll make it a little easier to pick up with the magnet. And, you know, just the way I am, you know, it's bothering me, so I'm going to get right back to work. We're going to get some foam next week, and I'll get carving, and I'll put out another segment right after this, you know, within like 2-3 weeks, so we can follow up and see the difference between the expanding foam and the pink insulation foam. So, you know, so I hope everybody liked this segment. I hope it stimulates some conversations. I hope it stimulates some ideas out there. You know, this is kind of more leaning towards the operations aspect, you know, worrying about loads, you know, in those open cars, so you can see and visualize. And also, you know, having loads in there for now when we do our ops videos is going to be a little easier for everyone to see, oh, that's an empty and that's a load going out. So, you know, so in that respect, I think we're moving in the right direction. So leave me your likes, leave me your comments, leave me your dislikes if you don't like it. Just give us some feedback. And other than that, that's all I really have for you this time. And we'll see you next time on Central Jersey Conrail and Inscale. Thanks.